Justice Ken Wise is in his 18th year of service as a Texas judge. He served as a judge of the 157th District Court and the 334th District Court before joining the 14th Court of Appeals, where he has served for the past 8 years. Justice Wise is an avid Texas historian. He hosts the award-winning history podcast, Wise About Texas, which has over 1 million downloads in 153 countries worldwide and is ranked in the top 0.5% of podcasts worldwide by listennotes.com. He's an adjunct professor of history and government at Houston Baptist University. He's published several journal articles and given hundreds of speeches on all aspects of Texas history. Justice Wise serves on the board of directors of both the Texas State Historical Association and the Texas Historical Foundation. He's president-elect of the Texas Supreme Court Historical Society and a member of the Supreme Court Task Force on Historic Court Record Preservation. He's also a member of the Delegados Associate Board of the Bryan Museum in Galveston, Texas. A Houston native, Justice Wise is very active in the Houston community. He's a director of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo and advisory director for the former Texas Rangers Foundation. Justice Wise is an admiral in the Texas Navy, and the governor of Kentucky commissioned him as a Kentucky colonel. He's a fifth-generation native Texan with roots dating back to Houston in 1836. He's married to Sarah Wise, and they have 2 children, Sarah Jane, who's with us this evening, and Jackson. And Ken Wise celebrated his birthday the Tuesday of this week. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you Justice Ken Wise.
Howdy. I will just do this with displaying the courage of the frontier and not use my reading glasses. It's a real pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you very much, Margaret, for having me. Thanks to you all for coming. This is an important event in Texas every year. I want to thank a couple of sets of special friends, Michelle Haas, Margaret, Teri with the Texas History Trust, and Coconut Bay Press made the effort to be here today. Thank you. Dr. Stephen Harden and his lovely wife, Deb, all the way from Abilene. Dr. Harden is a Texas history hero of mine, and thank you all for making the effort to be here. And also my daughter, Sarah Jane, who is a teenager, agreed to travel with her father and watch him give a speech. So, honey, everything I do for Texas, I do for you, because I want you and your generation to enjoy the greatest place in the world. I'm going to read tonight from a section from John C. Duval, First Texas Man of Letters. I called it The Critical Dobie, and what I meant by that is Dobie as critic. Before John Crittenden Duval arrived in Texas at the close of 1835, Texans had expressed themselves in print almost altogether on the subject of politics or land with polemical or propagandistic intent. Between that date and 1870, when Duval's first book appeared, Texas furnished a subject for a vast amount of literature, the best part of it of a chronicle nature, most of which was written by foreigners like the Germans Romer and Postal and the historian Kennedy from England. Travelers from the north like omni-observant Olmsted, chronicling camp followers of the Mexican War like Chili con Carne Smith and Bartlett of the personal narratives. The works of such writers are important items in any collection of Texasana, but viewed in one way, they are no more a part of Texas literature than William Dean Howell's Venetian Life is of Italian literature. Yet during this period, before 1870, a remarkable unit of chronicle literature that is thoroughly Texan got itself written. I refer to the narratives of Texans imprisoned by the Mexicans, a singular confluent of the great stream of chronicles depicting American frontier life. First in date of experience, though not published until 1856, and then as an appendix in Yoakum's History of Texas, was the memoir of Peter Ellis Bean, a Casanovian escaper from dungeons, a Don Juan devil with the women, a filibustering backwoodsman and mustanger without prototype, and such a diverting, because authentic, liar that severe historians will hardly deign him even a sneer. When, in 1841, President Lamar sent forth an expedition to bring New Mexico into the Texas Republic, George W. Kendall of the New Orleans Picayune accompanied it looking for adventure and copy. He got both, and his graphic narrative of the Texas Santa Fe expedition, published first in New York in 1844 and in London the next year, is said to have sold over 40,000 copies. Kendall moved to Texas and became a gentleman sheep rancher. His narrative, like Bean's memoir, will always make bully reading. Some of the Santa Fe men returned from their harrowing march down the Jornada del Muerto from the prisons of Mexico City in time to join the Moerer expedition, the maddest, daringest, the feudalist, and the most imagination-swelling gesture in Texas history. The Moerer men did nothing to change the history of states, but again, the values of historians and the values of literature are at variance. The Moerer men drew for the white beans of life against the black beans of death. High-headed, hot-blooded, horse-racing, Houston-hating Thomas Jefferson Greene was one of their leaders. Back from the prison of Perote, he wrote Journal of the Texas Expedition Against Moerer. The energy, heat, and ambition of Thomas Jefferson Greene blazed in California, and at last burned out in his native land, North Carolina. In a way, John C. Duvall's chief works belong to the same breed of books. He was prisoner to the Mexicans at Goliad, doomed to death. But he escaped the massacre, and his early times in Texas is a story of that remarkable escape and of more remarkable wanderings before he rejoined human society. Bigfoot Wallace was one of the Moerer men, and about one-fourth of Duvall's biographical narrative concerning him is taken up with Bigfoot's experience as a member of the Moerer expedition. With the single exception of narratives pertaining to the cattle range industry, these chronicles of adventurers and frontiersmen made prisoners to the Mexicans form the most distinct, vivid, and vigorous category of writings that Texas has contributed to the epic of America. As has been said, Duvall's works belong in this category. At the same time, like creations of any writer of positive virtues, they make a category of their own. Duvall was the first thoroughgoing Texan to write of Texas in such a way as to warrant being called a man of letters. Never controversial and seldom didactic, though often mildly satirical, he wrote to amuse and interest. He was conscious, no matter how careless at times, of form. He was familiar with literary traditions. Without the least apparent strife, he sought after pictorial and dramatic effects rather than historical accuracy. Like Eliot, he narrated, quote, shadows of fact, verisimilitudes, not verities, close quote. He wanted to capture the flavor, the aroma that the most robust outdoors life on the womanless frontier, as well as the daintiest life of indoor culture, emanates. He was the first Texas man of letters. The outdoors lore that Duvall packs into his books, he himself picked up on the frontiers of Texas. He was truly, in a Mexican phrase, an hombre de campo, man of the camp and range. He saw life through the eyes of the frontier folk whom he knew so well. With the perspective of a cultivated gentleman, he employed their language with all its savor and similes drawn from nature. His satire, a mixture of childlikeness and horseplay, is mostly such as the frontier itself, directed against greenhorns, and the Cooper tradition of idealizing Indians. Incidentally, Duvall's satire on Cooper in The Adventures of Bigfoot Wallace anticipated Mark Twain's in Roughing It by 2 or 3 years, and is just about as good. To consider exclusively the literary influences upon Duvall is to be pedantic. The essential influences upon him were those of the Texas land, an open land, and its inhabitants, including wild animals and hostile Indians and Mexicans, as well as frontiersmen, mostly womanless, and settlement families. All of my judgments on books and men are largely personal, and The Adventures of Bigfoot Wallace is my favorite of Duvall's 3 narratives, although both the others arouse in me the most genial form of gusto. Bigfoot and Duvall had alike suffered from Mexicans' exceedingly harsh experiences that could never be forgotten or forgiven, though neither was embittered. In ranger campaigns on the frontier and in many a leisurely campfire and cabin talk, where time was as ample as the unfenced world beyond, they had been boon compadres. Bigfoot Wallace was a well-bred Virginian whose speech was so grammatically correct, though salty with homely idiom, that Duvall felt it necessary to apologize for it. The way in which Bigfoot Wallace and Duval collaborated with each other is without parallel in American literature. Always free and at home with himself, Bigfoot seems to have opened up to Duval with utmost gusto, and Duval took the bridle off him, slapped his rump with the reins, and told him to hiss his heels to heaven. If Bigfoot did not stretch the blanket enough, or if he needed bear grease to boil his speech, Duval supplied the deficiency. Duval emerges as an artist, and Bigfoot emerges robust, as natural as daylight and as red-blooded as a maverick yearling. We live with Bigfoot. We see him right there. We hear him talk, making an end all too soon. The historical accuracy of Duval's early times in Texas has been noted by all scholars who have collated it with the accounts of other escapes. Judging the narrative purely as history, Corner found such discrepancies as exist not worth mentioning. For, he says, they do not affect in the least Duval's main aim to present a truthful, living picture. Another escapee from the Goliad massacre, Samuel T. Brown, who was with Duval for a while, left a record that, so far as it goes, corroborates Duval in a surprising number of details. Duval was conscious of and strove for the art of writing. Even at the time he was making his escape from Goliad, he must have known that he had a story. On July 16, 1836, the Port Gibson, Mississippi correspondent printed an account of the Goliad massacre furnished by Duval. Emphatically, Duval was truthful. He was more truthful than mere literalness will sometimes permit. Fleeing, sneaking, crawling, lingering on his way eastward from Goliad, the narrator of early times encountered a plethora of good things mixed with fear and starvation that suggest Robinson Crusoe and the Swiss Family Robinson. The head era of settlers fleeing Santa Anna's army, the runaway scrape, had emptied every house west of the San Jacinto River until the land was as deserted of civilized inhabitants as Cabeza de Vaca found it more than 300 years before. The picture of this emptiness, the feel of the pristine land, the sense of expectation, the extraordinary windfalls in the way of food, bed, and books, the friendship with a dog, the hair-breadth escapes from enemies, the resourcefulness of a lone youth with senses sharply acute in a vast land of loneliness. These factors, far rather than literal accuracy, are what give this segment of Duval's autobiography its charm and worth. Because it is selective, encompassing probably in some instances what might have been as well as what was, it is veracious in the highest sense. One who cares not for nature, or who thinks that today and tomorrow alone hold interest, will find little in Duval. He never talks about nature in the manner of Bryant or Wordsworth or John Burroughs. He casually takes one into the land in its natural state. The past he wrote of was present to him when he wrote, and it becomes present to any congenial reader yet.